So while we could argue about, does your dog really need treats? Must you give them treats? That's something that plenty of us enjoy giving our dog treats. Treats can be purposeful and useful. And it becomes part of our relationship with our dogs.
Mm-hmm. As much as you don't want your dog to only work for treats, it is a very valuable resource. And so, especially with puppies, for crying out loud, like they need some currency to
Uh,
learn and reinforce. And
Potty
so
training with treats is
it
phenomenal.
is. And so we understand that there's a huge spectrum of how training is done, and that's fine. But what we really want to just encourage people with today is like, it's okay to give your dog treats, but we really should be careful about those treats and what we're offering our dogs, whether it's something that's, small and they eat it quickly, or it's something that we give them to chew on and they eat it slowly.
Hmm.
Either way, we want to be very careful with what treats that we're choosing, but we don't want to be so worried about it that we're afraid to give our dog treats at all.
Right.
And I think that you can really kind of have one or the other.
But anything you put in your dog's mouth, you should know what is in it. This is something that your dog is going to ingest. It's going to stay on the inside for a while, at least. And so you really need to be aware that through the wide world of treats, there are different qualities. There's things that we're okay with and things that we really don't want to see in a treat. As far as like some background stuff, we do like treats that are made in the USA. That way we know that at least there's some control over the ingredients and processing, perhaps. Canada is also probably pretty good. The ingredients really should be food items rather than mystery chemicals. So the ingredients should be things that you can pronounce and understand what they are. And if you find treats that are organic, even better. Things that we don't want to see. We don't want to see synthetic ingredients. We don't want to see a bunch of chemicals. BHA and BHT are preservatives. They are rubber stabilizers that were used in dog food, like in kibble, for a long time as preservatives. But then people found out what they were. Now they don't put them in dog food anymore, but they still show up in treats. So you want to read the ingredients and make sure that they don't include BHA and BHT. Polysorbate 80, ethoxyquin is another stabilizer. I don't think you would even see that one anymore because people got so upset about it when it was in pet foods. If the treats are bendy at all, or if they're chewable, if there's something that your dog is supposed to chew up quickly, there's probably going to be some texturizers in there and a lot of sugar typically. And sugar can show up as sugar, cane sugar, molasses, dextrose, maltodextrin, glycerin, and there's probably 20 other things that they can call sugar. And you just have to be aware, like you're potentially feeding your dogs a lot of sugar. Lecithin is another one. It's another texturizer. And that's something that I just kind of look at. If it's not labeled sunflower lecithin, then it is soy lecithin. And we just kind of question how much soy we and our dogs should be eating. So things that we don't mind saying are mixed tocopherols as a preservative. That is your synthetic vitamin E, but could be worse.
So those are a few examples of what you're going to look for on an ingredient label when you're actually looking at it. It's important to make sure that you actually read the ingredients and not just the front of the packaging. That's something that can be a kind of tricky, marketing trick that they like to use. And so something can look good, it can look all natural, but you really, really don't know until you flip over that package and see what it's made of. So really just making sure, again, to recap, we want to make sure that we've got something that is made in the USA or Canada. Watch out for this too. This is something else that I've seen. It'll say made in the USA with globally sourced ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
That's not sourced in the USA. It's only made and packaged in the USA, where the ingredients coming from. So that's, again, you kind of got to watch your labeling. They can be very tricky that way. So made in the USA or Canada, ingredients sourced in the USA or Canada. You want to make sure that most of what you're seeing on that ingredient label, when you flip that package back over, is actually food or something that you can understand
Mm-hmm.
what it is. And then obviously, anytime you can get something that's organic, it's always preferred. You're going to be
Mm-hmm.
missing out on those pesticides and all of that, which is good. And some things that are okay to see that aren't those ingredients are going to be your tocopherols or your lecithin, but we prefer it to be something that specifies what type of lecithin it is so that we know it's not soy,
Right.
soy of origin. So let's talk for a minute about like the forms of treats, because like when you go to food store
Yeah.
or Target or any of those places, I mean, it's just very overwhelming when you're looking at all of these different types of treats and chews and all of that. So we want to just go over some of those. I think first we're going to talk about some of the ones that we actually prefer to use, and then we'll
Mm-hmm.
go through and talk about some ones that we kind of try and stay away from because they're just not going to be ideal
Mm-hmm.
ingredient or ideal treats or chews.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that we really like to see is single ingredient treats. So, what we mean by that is you can find really nice animal protein single source
Mm-hmm.
treats that are freeze dried. And so you can find anything from a freeze dried raw food that comes in small pieces. You can find, little bits of beef liver or lamb lung or even tripe pieces. If I'm doing training or just trying to kind of like have something that my dog will eat quickly, I have a filler toy that, they knock the treats out or something like that. That's going to be my go-to most of the time is going to be that single ingredient, hopefully, an animal source or something like that. There are some
Mm-hmm.
times where you can find like sweet potato chews or things like that.
Sure.
Those are great every once in a while too. I would just maybe watch how often you're using those, because those are going to be higher in your carbs and in your sugar.
Then, gosh, there are just so many different things that we can give our dogs as treats. So you think about edible chews. So um, think of things like no hides or bully sticks. The ingredients are all pretty benign. At the same time, like even for my bigger dogs, I don't necessarily buy the bigger chews for them just because the dogs are bigger. When I look at the ingredients on something like a no hide, which I think is relatively inoffensive, but I do think, like, how much of this do I want my dog to eat? For my dogs, I also use collagen chews. There are tripe twists. You can get like there's one company that makes like it's like beef or bison esophagus with some tendon wrapped around it and everything's dunked in honey. Like there's just so much stuff out there. I give the treats that are it's like a bison bladder that's been kind of pounded flat, but you can use it as a frisbee. There's, it's just incredible. But in any case, too, I think that whoever you're buying the stuff from, they should also be very knowledgeable about where these things come from and how they're made. And so if you pick something up out of a bin or off a shelf, because not everything is packaged. So if you pick something up and you say, where does this come from? What is it actually made of? And how is it processed? Like if they don't know, I wouldn't buy it. I think that food treats and table scraps are very useful. One idea is that like it's a way to expand your dog's palate. It's a way to expand the food items that they have exposure to. Some of these things too are just very much a part of people's bonding ritual. So if people are sitting around on the couch in the evening and they're having popcorn, they want to share it with the dog because it's a food item, but they're like, you need to understand, right? Doritos are not a food item. Candy bars are not a food item. And so even there, we do need to kind of think about what are we feeding our dogs? What are they ingesting and how much of it? But I am basically a fan of table scraps in general. So at my house, if food falls on the floor, I would rather one of the dogs come over and get
We
it.
need to just
Yeah,
say
and
that.
of course, even with those kinds of things, you need to make sure that it's something that is not dangerous for your dogs, obviously. So grapes and raisins, anything with xylitol in it, which is surprising now. Xylitol is showing up in some vitamins and gummies, in peanut butter. So those kinds of things, you still need to make sure if you drop all the chocolate chips on the floor, no, you don't let the dog come and pick them up.
So some of the things that we would discourage you from maybe getting for your dog that we certainly stay away from is going to be anything like your dental shoes, like greenies or something like that. The ingredients in these things are pretty awful, and they really don't clean your dog's teeth as much as it seems like they do. Feed raw meaty bones instead. You're going to do your dog much more of a service to keep their teeth healthy and clean than you will with something like a greenie. The other thing that we obviously would stay away from, and a lot of people know this now, but we have to say it, is your commercially like mass manufactured rawhide. That stuff is so processed and soaked in bleach and chemicals. You couldn't pay me enough to give one of those to
Hmm.
my dog. They're highly cancer causing. They're awful. So we would definitely stay away from processed rawhide. One that can seem a little bit deceiving is going to be something like pig's ears or pig's feet. These are just they're very greasy, and it's very difficult to find ones that are actually sourced in the United
Hmm.
States or Canada. A lot of time they're coming from Brazil or South America or just somewhere else.
Hmm.
And so, we've really kind of just stayed away from the pig ear thing for a long time for that reason. Um, some of the really egregious ones too, kind of like the processed rawhide, is going to be what you find in kind of your general grocery store for treats. So it's going to be like your bacon strips, your milk bones.
You know how milk buns come in different colors? They're
Oh,
yellow, brown, green, and red. Food colorings in America are metals. And that's one way that our dogs get metal toxicity is by feeding them colored food items and colored treats. Pepperonis.
pepperonis, those types of things are full of some of the really bad ingredients and chemicals that we mentioned. So you're going to find, you're
Hmm.
going to find wheat flour, you're going to find was it BHA, you're going to find polysorbate 80, you're going to find that all in tons of sugar.
Hmm.
Those types of things you're definitely going to want to avoid. Those are also, known to cause health issues and cancer and things like that. So that's just kind of a quick
Hmm.
rundown list of some examples of treats and chews that you would maybe want to really try and stay away from.
Like, we have to remember that when we're giving our dogs treats, these are things that they are ingesting. So technically, yes, it should be part of their total caloric daily intake. There are some things that we don't necessarily have control over. And so, for example, I have plenty of clients where grandpa comes to visit and grandpa loves to sit with the dog and give dog treats. Well, things that you could do to manage that. If grandpa is buying junky treats, you could say, how about instead of those, we use these? And you can also short the dog at the previous or the next meal because you know that the dog is going to be stooped on treats. People love it. The dog loves it. It makes the dog feel more a part of the family. Grandpa feels like he's part of the pack. And so I feel like you don't want to break that bonding ritual, but you can let it happen, but let it happen in a way that where you're not cringing the entire time. When I give my dogs certain chewable treats, or like even the training treats that I use, and I'm just sort of in a phase right now. Honestly, I used to always use cheese and summer sausage and hot dogs, the good quality hot dogs, not the ones with all the sugar. And now I just am in a phase where I'm just buying treats for my dogs for training. And so I do read the ingredients. I'm well aware that some of the treats that I use are junkier than others, but I think ideally I just don't want to be overly purist about it. Uh, there's only so many things that we can control in life, and so I definitely know people where nothing passes their dog's lips that is not organic, and bless their hearts, I'm just not in that phase right now. But at the same time, we should definitely not be feeding our dogs absolute junk and garbage. So there are plenty of decent treats out there. They might not be organic, they might not be top of the line, but in controlled amounts, they're probably not going to harm our dogs.
So just to kind of sum it up, Really what we would encourage people to do, allow your dog to have treats. There's a lot of good reasons for dogs to have treats. We certainly don't want to overdo the treats because we don't want to cause, weight issues in our dog or something like that. But treats have their place, and there really is a lot of good that can be done with treats. Just the important thing to remember is to really be kind of choosy about your treats, just not to the extreme that you're afraid to give your dog any treat if it's not, organic, pasture raised, single ingredient. We want to kind of have some balance there. We want to have not, we don't want to be super stressed about it, but we certainly want to be cautious about what we're giving because some of these treats that we can see that we see on shelves are actually quite harmful. And then really remember, just because the front of a package of treats says duck and sweet potato, you gotta flip it over and
Hmm.
look at that ingredient list. There might be more in there than duck and sweet potato. And so you cannot take labels for granted. You have to look at the ingredients. And then just really have a healthy and balanced approach with treats. They certainly have their place. We don't want to overuse them. We don't want to deprive our dog of
Hmm.
joy. I certainly like having treats that aren't that great for me every once in a while. It brings me happiness, right? It's the same for our dogs. And it really is just
Hmm.
kind of a time for you to maybe have that little kind of fun bonding moment with your dog. I love sharing popcorn with my dog and things like that. So
Hmm.
just really try and go at treats, being mindful, but not being, too stressed or too lax about it. Treats are a wonderful thing to have as part of your dog's life.